Joined now by James Murray, who's the Exchequer Secretary to the Treasury and the MP for Ealing North. Minister, lovely to see you this morning. Thank you for your time on a Sunday. So the Office for Budget Responsibility says that 60% of the national insurance hike will be passed on to working people. So you have taxed working people. You did lie in your manifesto.
No, in our manifesto, we were very clear that we wouldn't increase taxes on working people. And if working people look at their pay slips that they get after this budget, they won't see any increase in income tax or national insurance.
No,
to address specifically the point around employers' national insurance, you know, we're not denying the fact that the change to employers' national insurance will have consequences. It was a very difficult decision, probably the most tough decision we took in the budget package overall, but it's essential to make sure we fix the foundations to fix the public finances, because that economic stability is crucial for growth.
So you're just excusing it on the basis of different wording. You've said that you're not putting up income tax or VAT or national insurance on actual employees, but the OBR says that 60% of the costs will be passed on to workers and consumers via lower wages and higher prices. So can we please agree that you have indirectly ended up taxing working people?
No, because the taxes on working people are not going up. Taxes on pay slips, national insurance and income tax
indirectly, you are adversely affecting working people. Please, Mr. Murray, please don't insult the audience. If the OBR is saying that 60% of these costs are being passed on to working people are being indirectly adversely affected by this budget. And Rachel Reeves herself called a national insurance employers' rate hike in 2021. She called it a jobs tax. She said it takes money out of people's pockets. So what's changed between 2021 and 2024?
Well, I'll tell you what's changed since we won the election, which is that we discovered the £22 billion black hole in the public finances, which the previous government concealed from the public, from the OBR, from the Office of Budget Responsibility. That pressure on public finances is something that we have to deal with. And we could have taken a decision after winning the election to sweep it under the carpet, to ignore it, to pretend it wasn't there. But we were absolutely determined to use this first budget of our new government to fix the public finances and to get stability back in the economy.
How on earth do you fix the public finances with £72 billion in spending?
The way that we fix the public finances is by setting out our two clear fiscal rules. Now, let me just tell you very briefly what they are. Number one, the stability rule says that day-to-day spending will be paid for through tax receipts. So no more borrowing for day-to-day spending like we had under the previous government. We will pay for what we spend on public services, live within our means, and end to borrowing for day-to-day spending. The second rule, the investment rule, is about getting debt falling as a proportion of our economy, whilst boosting long-term sustainable investment. And actually, that's what people need for the future. And that's what businesses want as well. Businesses want us to invest in the future and provide a stable outlet.
Minister, forgive me, but you're acting as if this budget is sort of justifiably gone down well with the public and businesses and other bodies. The Joseph Rowntree Foundation says that families will be £770 poorer because of this budget. Let me just give you one example of many business owners who contacted the Telegraph last week. I run an SME with 72 employees. This charge on employers' NI has cost us £82,000 per annum from April 2025. This will mean no pay rise for staff, no recruitment and potentially jobs lost. How does this protect workers and stimulate growth? We know it's not going to stimulate growth, because the OBR has downgraded growth by 0.7% across the next 5 years. So this budget's been a disaster, hasn't it?
No, what this budget set out to do is to meet the very first promise we made in our manifesto, which is to deliver economic stability. Now, we've got to do that in order to get the public finances back on a firm footing, to give businesses the confidence to invest and to set the country in a better direction. That is what this budget did. And look, I'm not denying there were some really tough choices, difficult decisions. We've talked about decisions on tax. There's also decisions on spending and welfare. Difficult decisions to get the public finances on a firm footing, but it's absolutely essential to do that to make sure that we can get that growth in the long run and to make sure businesses have the confidence to invest.
Well, one decision you made was to give public sector workers a pay rise, even though they represent just 17% of all employees in this country. The vast majority are in the private sector, which all of the organisations that have analysed the budget agree will be worse off because of it. Let's turn to farmers. The decision to put inheritance tax at 20% on farms worth over 1 million. Now, maybe if you're on the left, you think that only affects a minority because there's this misconception that all farmers are as rich as Croesus. In fact, 70,000 farms in the UK are going to be affected. We've now got huge concerns that it will affect food supply. So, on reflection, wasn't that a mistake, and won't you have to reverse that policy?
No, look, I understand that people who own farms or run farms want to understand the detail of this policy, and I'm actually glad to have the opportunity to set out some of the detail of it, because you mentioned the £1 million relief from the agricultural property relief that you mentioned. But let me just set this out how this works. So the existing features of the inheritance tax system still apply. So the nil rate bands that people get, the nil rate bands on residents, obviously the transfer between spouses, the rules on 7 years gifting before people pass away, things not being subject to inheritance tax, all of that still applies. And what this means in practice is that in most cases, if you have a couple who are passing on a farm to the next generation, they will get £2 or £3 million, which is not subject to inheritance tax. So above that £2 or £3 million, so paying no inheritance tax on that first £2 or £3 million, above that, the rate will be half what it is for everyone else. It'll only be 20% rather than 40%.
I get all of the figures.
I
completely get the figures, Minister.
So one final thing.
But the farming community is saying that this is a catastrophic... I know, but we can have all of your justifications. With the greatest respect, have you ever been a farmer?
I haven't been a farmer, no. But
no, so shouldn't we gauge the reaction of farmers above the reaction of a Treasury Minister as to how catastrophic this is for the agricultural sector? We've also heard from people who work for care homes and hospices. Hospices, Minister. These are institutions that care for people at the end of life, saying that they're going to be struggling with the increase in employers' NICs.
But if I can just go back to your point around farmers and farms and agricultural.
Well, can you actually, you've made a point about farmers. Could you address the hospice point, please, quickly, because we've only got a minute left.
Okay, well, the point around employers' national insurance is that when you look at things like GPs, dentists, the care sector and so on, they will all be funded, obviously, through the settlements that we set out in terms of public spending. So the employers' national insurance increase doesn't kick in until April next year. And one of the reasons why we've taken tough decisions...
It's going to put staffing costs up for hospices and care homes.
Well, one of the reasons why we took the tough decision around employers' national insurance is to provide that funding for public services. And obviously the NHS got a very positive settlement at the budget, and the Health Secretary will set out the allocations of that money in due course.